Welcome back to the channel, guys. Thank you once again for joining me as I turn a Mercedes-Benz Sprinter panel van into a badass adventure wagon. Let's call this episode How to Run Your Van Off of a Powerbank Part 2. So if you did catch my first electrical video, that was all about the actual power bank itself that I've decided to use for running this van, and that is a Goal Zero Yeti 3000X. Absolutely awesome, built in B2B, built in MPPT. It's a little bit different than all the other power banks about at the moment, and I'm going to tell you why. So this is the Jackery Explorer 1000. It holds about 100 amp hours of battery. It's got a lovely powerful little inverter in there. Now at one point, every successful YouTuber was given one of these to do a review. I wasn't given one of these. so just that was a little bit of food for thought there. But I did win this in a raffle. So that means I don't have to like it. Spoiler alert, I do. It's a powerful little box of tricks, this. But what I did notice, when all these videos were bounding about, no one actually said how you're going to get your outputs from this. So yes, it's got a couple of USBs, and you can run phones, you could charge tablets, sometimes even a laptop maybe. But no one really said how you would go about incorporating this into a bigger setup. Now, I know this isn't actually designed for such things as running a van. Some people on YouTube said that you could run a diesel heater off of it. Now, I have a planar diesel heater, not the cheap Chinese diesel rip-off. I can't run mine off of this Jackery. False information. So my diesel heater tops out at about 150 watts last time I ran it. That is too much for this. Now that is not a failure on Jackery's part because it doesn't say it can go that powerful. It says on there quite clearly it's a 10 amp output. 140 watts. If it was 144 watts at 12 volts, for example, that would be 12 amps. 12 12s are 144. Asking this to run a diesel heater just on that initial startup and the ending of a diesel heater process, it's just too much. Once a diesel heater is up and running, it takes 20 watts. It's, it's basically nothing. But that startup process just seems to be a little bit too much for something like this. Now, like I just said, that is no way a failure on Jackery's part. I think the power bank that I'm using to run my van and products such as the Jackery and the smaller power banks, I think they have a different purpose. The Jackery you take with you somewhere. That is an addition to a setup. The Goal Zero itself, it's a bit heavier, it's a bit bigger. You don't want to be lugging it about necessarily. It's a power supply, I think, as opposed to a backup such as a Jackery. The Jackery, actually, I've seen numbers on the front of the Jackery that supersede its expectations. The inverter has given me more than it says it will, and the output on the 12 volt cigarette lighter has given me more than it says it will. Now, what people don't tell you is how to convert that into your van, and I'm going to show you. The only way to get a decent power output out of a Jackery is this cigarette lighter. Like I just said, you've got a couple of USBs here, and yes, you've got your 240, but we're not running vans off 240, not really. So the only way is to use this cigarette lighter. Now, plugging one thing in a cigarette lighter isn't going to help you much. So the only way to really do it is get your cigarette lighter. Now, you can get 20 amp cigarette lighter outlets, so this isn't as cheap and nasty as it kind of looks, if I'm honest, and it's got a fuse inside it. And the only way to do it is rig that into a fuse board and then come off with your lights, your water pump, your whatevers. But don't expect too much from an item like that. A Jackery will not run your van. A Goal Zero 3000X will definitely run your van. So what I'm trying to build up to is how to actually incorporate such a unit into your van, because like I just said, people make these allegations that these units will do certain things, but I haven't actually seen anyone actually do it. So I have actually been a culprit of saying, yeah, power banks are plug and play. I said that in my last video. It's not actually quite as simple as that, because you may start with a lead such as this. This will plug into, this is called an Anderson port, or actually it's called a high power port. This will plug into the face of the Goal Zero, no problem at all. But when you buy a connection like that, they're only 300-400 long. So how do we get from this to our van, to our van's electrics? Now, what I've actually done is used a Mega Fuse bus bar from Victron. Basically, it's a mechanical fuse board, so it's got like nuts and bolts, and I'll show you that in a minute. And it was a decent way to take my van electrics and terminate them. Positive ground, positive ground, positive ground, that kind of thing. I get to put an inline fuse in, and then I connect it to my Goal Zero using such wires as these. It's great because we like to see fuses in for safety, but also it's a nice mechanical fitting. I don't like the idea of actually joining wires this big. I don't like joining them together like with, wouldn't like to solder something like this. That's not my bag. I like to see a mechanical fitting, and at that point, anything like that can be removed. If that, for example, started to wear or had a dodgy connection, I don't know, I could actually replace that. Just simple as. I could buy another one of them off Amazon for £11. I'm going to take you inside, show you how I have incorporated my power bank into the van. So here's my finished setup, guys. That is my Victron bus bar, almost like an inline fuse holder, but with 6 of them. So the B2B, which were just big wires coming from the vehicle's battery, just like you would do a Victron or anything like that, actually terminate into the other side of there, go through an 80 amp fuse, and then I've joined the factory wire from the Goal Zero, which allows me to fit that into the back of the Goal Zero, and that is the B2B. That's a nice way of joining a factory wire to the wiring of the van, and also allows me to put inline fuses in. Absolutely cracking. Now the solar, I've actually just joined them together. I've joined them together using the MC4 connections. I didn't need to put a fuse in line. That's got its own MPPT, and that's quite happy to sit there just directly inside it. This here is the high power output. This goes through my fuse board, once again 60 amp, and then from there it actually goes next door and into my Auxbeam fuse board. This little thing is absolutely awesome. I'm going to show you that in a minute, totally separate. I think this is revolutionary. So that would literally, usually if you didn't have an Auxbeam fuse board, you would just go from here into something like this, which allows you to fuse it, and then into maybe like that Blue Sea fuse board that you just saw me messing around with, like your 12 volt go to everything fuse board. Now this is a cigarette lighter. This is a cigarette lighter output. It's 14 amp. So that cigarette lighter output runs my diesel heater, and that's all it runs. My diesel heater is kept totally separate from the fuse board, because what I didn't want is to be able to have the ability to turn off that diesel heater while it's running by accident. It's totally separate. It's got its own inline fuse, rated high enough, so if there was ever a problem, that would just blow. I think that way, because if you turn off a diesel heater halfway through its process, it's not very good for them. They don't like it at all. It's quite harmful to the unit, and I've actually got a planer. I invested in a decent diesel heater as opposed to a Chinese knockoff. I don't want to ruin it, so I don't want the ability to be able to turn that off halfway through its process and kill it. That is on a separate line. What that also helps with is not asking the Goal Zero to produce so much power all through the same place. Now where I've plugged in that HPP output for the 12 volt, that is 30 amp regulated on its own. By using the cigarette lighter above it, that also has its own power supply. So I'm not drawing from one place. Now I've seen Victron systems where when that diesel heater kicks in, sometimes the light can flicker. That's because it's asking for too much power all at once. Now that keeps that totally separate. If I wanted to unplug it, I can, but I can make sure the diesel heater is not running at the same time. I love the idea of keeping that separate for more than one reason. I'm going to prove my point now about the diesel heater. I'm going to unplug everything apart from the diesel heater. I'm going to run it and I'm going to keep my eye on the numbers. So I've just killed the power to the van. Literally nothing is being run at the moment except the backlight for the diesel heater itself. So that's why it's kind of almost hitting 1 watt every now and then, because it's almost nothing. I'm going to jump up there and turn the diesel heater on and we will see what it tops out at. So for one brief second there, it actually hit 168 watts, which is 14 amps. That's almost half again, asking the Jackery to do half again. Now, once again, it's not a failure on Jackery's part. It doesn't say it's a 14 amp and it's topping out at 14 amps. It says it's got a 10 amp output. When would you ever be using such a powerful item down the beach, for example? It's supposed to be a portable power bank. Now, I love my little Jackery. Now, I use it for powering my laptop when I'm away and all my GoPro batteries, so I don't have to chip into the vehicle's power supply. The Goal Zero is designed for something totally different. I mean, like I say, I just put 60 amps B2B into it. Got a built-in MPPT. The Jackery has got a built-in MPPT, don't get me wrong, but they are totally different. I wouldn't be trying to run, I'd run a smaller setup, maybe a trailer if it didn't have a diesel heater. Now, I have, like I've just said, I've got a planar diesel heater. Perhaps the Chinese versions don't top so high on the old power consumption. I don't know. But now that it's running, I bet your life it's probably, yeah. It's now barely using 24 watts. It's not that, it's that initial start up and when you shut it down, that shutting down procedure, that's when it uses the, that's when it peaks at a high power. Totally impressed with both, by the way. The Goal Zero is, honestly, I think products like that are the way forward. I don't know if anything else out there is in the same bracket, you know, with the B2B side. I know there's so many power banks out there at the moment. Keen to try them all, don't get me wrong. I don't know if any of them have got a car integration kit like the Goal Zero. I found a little product from Auxbeam that looks a bit like that. It's an 8-gang switch panel. I'm not the first to do this, by the way, so I'm not going to credit myself for that. But this, which started life as a way of controlling all your different spotlights and light bars individually, so you can have your main light bar on, and then your bonnet one's on, and then your grille one's on, and then your fog lights on separately, independently, all at the same time, that kind of thing. That's how it started off. But people are hacking into that idea and they're actually controlling their whole van from this. So Auxbeam lighting is what they're actually called. So they're all about the LEDs and things like that. But what I love about Auxbeam is they move with the times. They've created a really cool product, but they've realised that some people don't use it for LEDs. People are hacking into it and changing its predominant function, but they're innovating, they're moving with the times. They give you this massive sheet here of stickers, and basically they know that you might be using it for something else. So you've got start and stop, you've got camera, you've got fan, pump, all different kinds of things. You've got so many, fuel, radio, power, DRL, stereo. They know that you might be using this for something else, and I love that. I love the fact that they are willing to let you use it for its what I think was not its original purpose. So to break it down for you guys, I've got my Auxbeam panel here, which basically controls everything but the diesel heater. The diesel heater is on its own. Let me take you up there just to prove my point. It's got its own switch panel directly into the Goal Zero. That's going to be faced on there because that's also the room stat as well. So I mean, this comes with like 3 foot of lead. I've had to extend it because a lot of people put it on the seat base there, but then that turns it off immediately and you're laying in bed here and you're still cold. So that's going to be up there, center of the room, absolutely lovely. Water gauge here, if you've seen that before, that can be turned off and on. The pump has to be powered up, but what I mean is you can turn that off so it's not draining your battery. Not that it's that much of a drain, but you also turn that backlight off because that could be quite annoying. One of these is basically an extension lead straight into the Goal Zero. So from the Goal Zero, it's plugged in and it runs straight to there. So whenever you turn your inverter on the Goal Zero, because once again that makes a noise and has a tiny 8-watt power draw, this is live. So this becomes live, and then from there you can put a cooktop on there, you can boil the kettle, use hair straighteners. Basically that Goal Zero will run anything that you would run in a household setup. And then this becomes live when you are on electric hookup. So when you're at a campsite and you're plugged in, it means you get 2 ports. You can use this for maybe even more powered items, or give your battery bank a break and use this. If you were plugged in and you only wanted to use one item, of course go ahead and use the electric hookup. Don't use your battery bank. So the reason behind using a power bank for this whole setup was always trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. Whoever ends up with this van, I want them to be able to not have to worry about parameters, discharge rates, all of the ins and outs of a Victron system. I'm trying to make camping a little bit simpler. So the Goal Zero, when it's at 20%, it's not broken. You just carry on using it and you charge it up. It's simple. It tells you on the front how long you've got left to use it, how long it's going to take to charge it. User friendly, simple. Even though it's a really clever bit of kit, it's a simple creature as a end user. Then I found the Auxbeam panel. That's taken user friendly to a whole new level. So yes, on the front of the panel it literally says, if you want your lights, press this button. If you want your fridge on, press this button. If you want your max fan on, press this button. Simple. Then it gets increased another level by this funky little app. Very simple. Each one of these buttons on here, believe it or not, wait for it, correlates to a button on the fuse panel on the switchboard itself. So, trying to use my tripod so you can see more than one thing at the same time. Boom. Cupboard lights. Is the TV on behind me at the moment? Check that out. Absolutely wicked. So from the touch of a button, you're in bed. Oh, I've left the light on. Oh, I don't want this, I don't want that. You press a button, it's off. You can change the colour of the panel itself. It's cool in all these different colours. Let's leave it on green, eh? That seems to be the going theme. This just makes it so much easier for the end user. I'm trying to make it just that one step more simple for people to go camping. What appealed to me the most about being able to turn off each item with just a switch there was the fact that when I tuck my van away in its storage unit, my big black one, I am then stuck with turning the pump off and also disconnecting the fridge. I should trust it enough to let the solar power the fridge, but because I'm away from the van, I don't want to ever get back and find it's on zero. So what I do is I open the door of the fridge and I go round to the back and I take the fuse out to the fridge, because that's all I've got in place. I never knew that I would be storing the van at a different place, but this van turned up and I haven't got the room. So this here, if you ever not using it for a long period of time, you press one button, open the door, and it's off. No clambering around, taking fuses out and that kind of thing. Absolutely awesome. There can't be an easier, more user-friendly setup than the one that I've chosen. So this is the Auxbeam fuse board, the mechanics behind it, should I say. So we take our positive and our ground straight into here like you would on any other fuse board. We go via this breaker, but I've actually got fuses the other side of here as well. This is the data cable. This will run straight to the switch panel itself. It's basically the data cable that when you press them buttons it brings these to life. Now this is actually what I usually call a remote wire. So if you wanted this to only come to life when your ignition was on, you would wire this into there. I've taken a link from there, so as soon as my Goal Zero is powered up, it livens this up. So this is constantly on because it's running my van. I need it to be on whenever the Goal Zero is on. So as simple as that. These are regulated fuses, all to different sizes. Now these run up to like 30 amps. So I believe that's 30, 30, 20, 20, 10, 10, 5, 5. More than suitable to run a van. There isn't anything in a van that's running at 30 amps, let me tell you. So that's the setup, nice and tidy. Electric hookup in, so whenever we're hooked up to electric, it takes over the fridge, because the fridge is wired straight into there. It then powers this socket, which then charges the Goal Zero. So that's basically the same as your, people call them shore power hookups. That's going to charge the Goal Zero straight away, and it also brings the socket to life up there. It also brings this to life, which then heats our water. So I started this video with, does it work? Will the Goal Zero power your van sufficiently? Absolutely yes indeed. I'm going to put some B-roll over the top now to show the B2B working. It hit almost 700 watts earlier, which is basically like 60 amps. Absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. That will literally blast power into your Goal Zero. Absolutely lovely. The MPPT, I've had figures up to 250 watts from 280 watt panels. That's all right. That's pretty much what you expect. You never get 100% sunshine here in the UK, and I can't always keep my eye on it every second of the day. It works an absolute treat. So that's it, guys. That's this week's video. Pretty much wrapped up. A bit of a change of scene from the driveway. I do keep getting interrupted, so there might be cuts here and there, people walking by, because I am in a public footpath. But that is this week's video sorted. Electrical setup, the easiest setup, but you got to know how. You got to know how to integrate it into your van. It's easy saying these things are plug and play, but there is a process before you get to being plug and play. Like now, I can literally unplug 4 or 5 wires and take the unit out. Yes, therefore it is plug and play, but it was a journey getting here, and that's how I've done mine. Any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Please hit the thumbs up, please do subscribe, and I will see you next Tuesday.